Welcome to yet another episode of WIC TV, a cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about issues with political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. Gang, have we got a show for you today? Tonight, we have the Cypher report, as well as Philosophical Zombie Hunter, to discuss Gaza the day after, when the military operation, the war, the genocide, whatever you want to call it, when that is done, okay? The day after, what happens, right? What happens to Gaza? Is it occupied? Is it destroyed? Is it given a second state? I don't know. We're going to find out today. We are going to give the mic to first Philosophical Zombie Hunter and then to Cypher. So, Philosophical Zombie Hunter, the day after in Gaza. What's your take here? What's your position? What do you got? Give it to us.
Okay, I got a PowerPoint presentation, so I'm going to try and share that.
What?
Oh, I can't share it.
If you give us what you got. Like, if you wanted me to share a presentation, you needed to let me know before, and I could have arranged that. But
I can't do it. Okay, I'll just read
I'm
it
sorry,
out.
I need to give you permissions and.
No, it's fine. I'll just read it out.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So basically, the way I see it for Gaza the day after, there's three scenarios. One is the first being that Israel loses, and it loses to get its hostages back. The second situation is Israel wins with international support, specifically about administrating Gaza after the day after. And the third option is what's called the United Emirates of Palestine, which I'll explain later. There are two things that cannot happen after when everything is over. The first thing being is the two-state solution is essentially dead. In October 7th, Gaza was used as a springboard for an invasion. A state for the Palestinians could serve as another springboard for an invasion in the future. So that kind of is the nail on the coffin in that scenario. Israel left Gaza in 2005. Israel left Lebanon in 2000. Both Lebanon and Gaza are currently at war with Israel. So from Israel's security point of view, this is not going to work. And I would even argue further that the two-state solution perpetuates a forever war. Because there's always an excuse to attack Israel. There's always an excuse to blame Israel as the oppressor in an effort to withdraw Western support. There's always some reason never to accept a peace agreement from the Palestinian side, which has like the situation where the Palestinians are both extremely oppressed and in their area and also extremely demanding to never accept a peace deal. The other thing that can't happen in the day after is that Israel cannot really continue working with the United Nations or any agencies or NGOs that work with the United Nations. For those who don't know, the UN condemns Israel more than all the rest of the world combined. NGOs publish a paper against Israel for every 9 Palestinians that die, versus 2,506 to all the worst other countries combined. Those papers are then used to litigate Israel in the ICC, ICJ. So it's kind of like a factory of 95% of the work of these NGOs is to litigate Israel. And the UN largely sorry.
Let him get
I'm
through.
sorry, Wick. Is this a? Yeah, it's fine.
Wrap it up a little bit, right? Let's get. I want to get to the heart of it. So.
Okay, so I'll move on then. I had a slide about facts about the war, so I guess I can go over that later. So basically, the three outcomes. Israel loses, so Israel cannot get its hostages from Hamas. As we saw recently, the hostages are also hidden in civilian homes. There's huge Palestinian civilian support for Hamas at this stage, either as I mentioned, holding hostages, restocking or rearming recruiting new candidates, and Sinwar has said that he has Israel right where he wants them. At some point, the Israeli public is going to pressure the Israeli government to make a deal, and that deal will only be for Hamas to remain. What does that mean? It means that Israel will create a large buffer zone between Israel and Gaza. Israel will cease all trade and economic activity with Gaza, including disallowing worker visas, but it will allow foreign aid to come in. It will probably replace the fences with large concrete walls. It will start a process, what we've seen in this conflict, of a long process of asymmetric warfare that Israel will basically strike inside Gaza for the foreseeable future whenever it notices a significant buildup of forces or weapons.
Okay.
And it also will begin a process of fighting Lebanon and Iran, because
It would be
losing to Hamas would be perceived as a weakness, and October 7 is the way to destroy Israel.
Okay. So I'm just going to cut to the chase for the thing. What do you think should happen on October? The war ends. Should Gaza be given back to the Palestinian Authority? Yes or no?
No.
Okay. Great. Cypher, give us what you got.
Yeah, so the likely scenario based on everything that's happening globally, as well as where the United States position is, regardless if Trump wins or Biden wins the presidency in 2024, the likely situation is that Gaza will be reoccupied for some time. How long that is anybody's guess. A lot can happen in 3-4 years, but as long as Bibi Netanyahu is prime minister, Gaza will be occupied to some extent, and some of that might be justified. Obviously, Hamas cannot be given a territory from which it can launch attacks from, and that means in order for Israel to have its proper security, some occupation will have to happen. However, with that said, my opinion is that as long as the right-wing government in Israel continues to dominate Israeli politics, that occupation will follow a similar vein as the West Bank, which will include security checkpoints throughout the thing, the military basically being the de facto in charge, with some modicum of a little bit of autonomy possibly given to some Palestinian authority. Not necessarily PLO, because Bibi Netanyahu has already said that they will not Fatahize, I think that's how you would pronounce that, the West Bank, or the Gaza Strip, and that would be unacceptable. And there's been vague gestures on that since basically before the war began, but after the war began in earnest, he's been saying it multiple times, where he will not allow the PLO in its current iteration to control the Gaza Strip. What should happen from all this is that in order to guarantee Israeli security, there needs to be a deal of some sort that allows Palestinians to have full autonomy in some fashion, and for there to be security guarantees, whether that is a deal with the other Arab countries, including Iran, because Iran cannot be left out of this as well if we actually want peace in the area, and rebuilding of the area, more economic opportunity, and more self-determination to be allowed for the Palestinian people. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a two-state solution to get that. It could be a federated system where there is a Palestinian state, like the United States has a state, and an Israeli state, and then there is a single state structure to promote that. Whether that's going to happen, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's the least likely to happen. But
what do you
some
think
sort
is
of
going to
autonomy.
happen?
What I think what is going to happen is that Bibi is going to remain in power as long as he can, and then whoever takes over from him will continue on the policy of Palestinian oppression and the eventual cementing of a secondary class citizen, not even citizen, secondary class status for all Palestinians, regardless of where they live, minus the 15% or whatever that live in Israel proper.
Just to guide this debate, because PowerPoints, tech issues, we're going to need some guidance here, so I'm going to jump in a little bit here to kind of push this forward, and this is to both of you, okay? The war ends. What should Israel do next with Palestine? With Gaza, specifically? And tell me why.
What time horizon?
In the next couple of years, right? For the immediate foreseeable
I
future.
like the United Emirates of Palestine, which I think Cypher was alluding to with the federated solution.
Where do we disagree here then?
The disagreement, I think. Go ahead.
I disagree on everything. Apart from that federated solution, I disagree on everything he said.
Okay, tell me why. Give us the main disagreements you
The
have
highlights?
with Cypher. Yeah, the highlights,
So
please.
occupation of Gaza, I mean, that there's no appetite for that. And in fact, even the army right now, it's not occupying Gaza. It's clearing some place and leaving. It's not staying to occupy it. Full autonomy.
It's destroyed. Why occupy the places that are already destroyed? There's nothing there for anybody to use.
Well, it only destroyed 16% of Gaza, and the issue is
where is that number coming from?
The IDF.
So the IDF is claiming it only destroyed 16% of Gaza.
Correct.
How much of that is left over in Rafah?
It gave that out, I think, 3 days ago.
No. I'm saying they have not moved into Rafah yet. Correct? Not.
Oh, halfway into Rafah when they gave that figure. Yeah.
Okay. So they're claiming that they're halfway into Rafah.
Can I just continue because?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, full autonomy for security. I mean, Gaza had full autonomy for, I don't know, 16, 18 years. I don't see how giving them full autonomy is basically saying, build those tunnels, build those terror infrastructure, arm yourselves, and then have some kind of coordinated attack against Israel. I mean, how can you say that?
You think that Gaza had full autonomy given all
Yes, I think Gaza had full autonomy.
Even though that Gaza was
literally an autonomous territory. Well, let me just explain. It's literally an autonomous territory with a court system, police, 24 Brigade Army, a navy, and it was like that. It built 300 miles of terror tunnels under certain civilian buildings. I mean, you can say that it was a belligerent entity, and its neighboring countries, both Israel and Egypt, didn't really like it that much, so they put some border security. But it's in itself, it was autonomous. Sorry.
Some border security.
Some border security.
They wrapped it in cement walls and then prevented any goods from not any goods.
Any goods? How come?
That would be hyperbolic. I'm correcting myself.
How come all the supermarkets were full of food?
Yeah, let Cypher explain and elaborate, please. Explain and elaborate.
Not any goods, because that would be hyperbolic, and I apologize to the audience because that's not fair to them. But they had a numerous different kinds of goods that were prevented from getting into the Gaza Strip. That included building materials. That included some certain kinds of metals. That included certain types of agricultural products, stuff like that, which did, for all intents and purposes, create a situation where Gaza could not be fully developed. Now, you can argue that some of those things were actually on the list because of security concerns. I know that this is a thing that, didn't trip Destiny up, but they were saying, they can't have cookies because of the sugar, right? And they were making rockets out of sugar. Fine. They were making rockets out of sugar. Let's just give them that one, right? But the other stuff do you want to honestly say that you need to have every single type of not every single type of building material, but a lot of building materials being not allowed in for security reasons, like cement? Come on.
So your point is completely irrelevant and largely bullshit.
How is it irrelevant and bullshit?
I'll explain. I'll explain. So there was still an autonomous territory, even if you say, well, there were restrictions, but that's irrelevant to them being an autonomous territory. Now, with regards to them getting stuff into Gaza, I mean, 91% of the concrete that were used to build building, and I mean like lavish building, like 4 meters high ceiling kind of building, all marble, $50,000 like furniture. There were like some serious expensive building in Gaza. There's 1,200 millionaires and billionaires in Gaza.
Well, now we all know.
Hold on. 91% of concrete was smuggled in. All the supermarkets were fully
smuggled in.
You can literally go.
So they're saying.
Let me just finish my damn point.
Finish your point. Then we
you can literally go to to day in the life in Gaza, if you type it in Arabic, either TikTok or Google or
Sure.
YouTube from 2 years ago, you'll see someone going to the supermarket.
Yeah.
You'll see advertising for a new car dealership that sells German cars or sells like a butcher or meat, and you can see all these for yourselves. Don't trust all the hype around how poor they were. I mean, obviously some places were very poor, but some places were also very rich. And they managed to get things in. Go ahead.
So they managed to get things in despite the blockade because they were smuggling it in through tunnels. If Israel had its way for the actual blockade to exist, that stuff would not have gotten in. So that would have meant that there would have been less building and less building and the ability to create some sort of economic independence in Gaza had they not circumvented those restrictions. Now, what do those restrictions also do? Those restrictions also actually helped Hamas stay in power. And the reason why I say that is because anytime there's any kind of outside entity putting any sort of restrictions on a group of people, whether it be, Palestinians in the West Bank, Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, black people in the American South during Jim Crow, all these type of things. Anytime that happens, the more radical elements of those groups end up gaining some sort of power. So in order for Israel to actually have its own security issues alleviated, they need to come to some sort of arrangement that allows Palestinians to have the autonomy and the ability to come up with their own self-determination of some sort. I'm not an ethno-nationalist. I'm not going to say that they need their own state necessarily, because ethnic nationalism is bullshit, but we can quibble over those things later.
I can reply. So technically, it's still irrelevant to the point of autonomous. You're just saying it's nice to have if they had these things, but it doesn't change the fact that it was still autonomous. Now, with regarding to economic independence, they will always be reliant on Israel to some degree. Israel is the largest economic player by far, but it's got $500 billion or 525 billion economy. Everyone else is like a fraction of that, a tenth of that even. So it will always be the largest economic player. And for people in Gaza to be wealthier, they'll have to work more with Israel, either inside of it as a variety of different options, or trade with it. Now, with regards to what you're saying, just last point, Bibi already did what you're suggesting. In 2019, he released a sort of manifesto or path forward called "Shrinking the Conflict," which the idea was if you can't have a political peace, at least you'll have an economic peace. So what he tried to do is he tried to make the people in Gaza and the people in the West Bank wealthier and discourage them from going to Hamas. So some examples would be they handed out more visas, they trained, they paid like $100 million to train Gazans and people from Palestinians in general, to have skills that are relevant in Israel. They improved the West Bank's infrastructure for internet and telephony. They had corridors for the West Bank, so containers can come in faster and they'll be like checked in, or can go directly into like the factory or warehouse. And they did all these things so you basically have an economic peace. So the Palestinians will have something to lose if they start a conflict.
Right. But how does that in any way... So Bibi tried to do economic for peace rather than land for peace. He never agreed with land for peace. That's why he thought that the withdrawal from Gaza in 2000... Is it 5? I might be wrong on the year. 2005, 2006, whenever the full withdrawal happened.
Yes.
Yeah. Whenever it fully happened, right? And he came out, said this was the worst thing that could ever be happen. This is like either a few years after or a few years before. He said that the largest question in Israel is not necessarily the autonomy of Gaza or the West Bank, but the Palestinians inside Israel with citizenship. So there's that as well.
But to some degree, he was right. No, like we just had October.
No,
7th,
he was not right, because
but something really bad happened.
Hold on. Let him tell. Okay, so. The claim here is that he was wrong. I'm going to let you elaborate on why he was wrong first, and then I'm going to let Cypher rebut. That's the order we're going to go in.
But just my point is that October 7 happened.
That's it? Okay.
That was it. That was the point.
Rebut, please.
So the reason why Benjamin Netanyahu was wrong about this is because Benjamin Netanyahu also tried to prop up Hamas against Fatah in order to keep Palestinian division going, in order to prevent the creation of a Palestinian state, which is part of the Likud, if I pronounce that right, party's internal doctrine since its founding. And it has not been one of those things that have evolved over time. It has been a core point of its party platform. And this is this thing that the Israeli right, from just left of Bibi Netanyahu all the way over to that one weird finance guy that just wants to glass the entire area. These are things that they all agree with. Palestinians cannot be allowed to have a Palestinian state, and that Israel must have control of the territory. They changed the one wording from like full political control to military security control 2017 or so, or somewhere around there in one of their recent reiterations. Similar to how Hamas changed their political stance from
just so
Israel
I'm clear,
can't exist to, oh yeah, Israel can exist, but it doesn't have a right to exist as a Jewish state.
Just so I'm clear on your point, you're saying he was wrong because he propped up Hamas and Hamas made October 7th, therefore he's to blame?
No, obviously Bibi is not 100% to blame for this. Now we can talk about the security failures that happened. What I'm saying is,
pause. What are you saying with regards to Bibi's point that if you give Gaza autonomy, then you'll get
Gaza
something
was not given autonomy in the way that would have prevented Hamas from doing these things.
Okay, hold on. Look.
The other thing that has to be mentioned here is that everybody wants to separate Gaza from the West Bank. That includes Israeli Jews, American political science people, people in Europe. Everybody wants to separate these two issues as if they're completely separate issues, right?
Well, we're also going to separate them because we're talking about Gaza today.
Hold on. Both of you stop. Cypher, why should we not separate those issues?
Thank you. So the reason we should not separate those issues is because the Palestinian people, the people that are at fault for some of this conflict, don't separate the issues themselves. They see them as brothers in arms against oppression. Now that's again how leftists see it as well. We can talk about how. What?
Where do you get this nonsense?
What do you mean? Where I get this nonsense?
They see them in brothers in arms.
Hold on, both of you. Philosophical zombie hunter. Why is he wrong about this?
Because essentially, like if you look at the West Bank and Gaza, they're all broken up into tribes. There's no unity, and even if you think about it, like the West Bank is vastly different than Gaza. Gaza is like a city, a very like a dense city, and the West Bank is like an open, rural, mountainous area. Gaza are people largely from Egypt. And the West Bank are largely people from Jordan. What is this unity? I don't understand what he's talking about.
You don't understand what I'm talking about because you want to keep them separate in order to perpetuate.
Yes, I'm a bigot. Okay, I just gave you a reason. Can you reply?
No. You are saying that they do not see themselves as Palestinians. They don't see themselves. They see themselves as Jordanian and Egyptians. That is not how they do this. That is not how they operate. That's not how they ever operated since 1942.
Hold on. What I believe is being said, just so we don't crosstalk or talk past each other here. When people separate these issues, one of the reasons they do that, and you could say that it's a mistake to do it, is because the issues at play are separate, and they may see them as part of the same overall problem of Israel existing, right? But
I think that's not fair.
Issues in the settlements are a different thing than the issues that are happening in Gaza. Do we disagree?
The reason that I disagree with this is because of the point that I was trying to make, which is the Palestinian people themselves do not see these two issues as separate. A large chunk of the motivating, if you want to say it's just Islamist, fine, we're never going to agree. But in my opinion, the large motivating factor here that continues to give Hamas support is the oppression that is happening in the West Bank. And that includes with Area A, B, and C. Right, Area A and B have Area A has more autonomy than B.
Once he finishes, you can respond. I promise.
Okay, go ahead.
We can acknowledge that Area A has more autonomy than Area B, and B has more autonomy than Area C. Area C is the least amount of autonomy. It's pretty much controlled directly by the Israeli military. even though that is the case, in all of those areas, settlements are being built. The Israeli military, the IDF, goes in under the Israeli law, to destroy quote unquote shanty towns in order to bring them up to building code and kick the people out from people that have been there for years. It is a similar issue to what happened when. Never mind. I'm going to let that one slide. Go ahead.
Okay. If you think that the recent attack, October 7th, sorry, the recent invasion, was because of the oppression in the West Bank, why didn't Hamas mention that as the reason for the Al-Aqsa flood?
They don't have to, because it's.
So let me make a point then. I don't think you're actually.
And everybody else does.
I don't think you're actually looking at the facts. I think you're West-plaining through your lens what is happening.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's not what's happening in the region. And they never mentioned anything about the West Bank in the Al-Aqsa flood. So okay, I'm not sure why you're necessarily associating it.
What did they mention?
Well, they mentioned that like a few months before then that the Israeli police went into the Al-Aqsa mosque and took some people out of there. That was the Al-Aqsa flood.
Okay.
Hold on. Do we disagree? Hold on. Oh, okay. Just to maybe interrogate you a little bit, Cypher, and I'm trying to be as neutral as possible. You know I disagree with you on some of these things. But
no.
I guess I'll ask you this. If the West Bank problems didn't exist, do you think October 7th still happens or no?
That I'm not entirely sure of, to be honest with you. If it didn't exist, my position here would be different. But
Fair
since
enough.
it exists, my position is what it is. Now, if it didn't exist, I don't know if Hamas would have as much support as it does among the Palestinian people. That includes people in the West Bank, and that includes people in the Gaza Strip. Because Hamas is shit. Everybody knows that Hamas is shit. Palestinians know that Hamas is shit. But when they attacked Israel, and then Israel responded in the way that it did, that is what ended up pushing the support for Hamas up. They got
wait, hold on. Are you saying that support for Hamas went up because Israel's oppressing Gaza?
It went up because of how Israel responded to the Al-Aqsa flood.
And nothing to do with how successful Hamas was at invading Israel? You don't think?
I mean, it's both. It's both. But
would you say the reason?
The polls. Hold on. The polls before October 7th indicated that Hamas was losing some support, not a lot, but some support in the Gaza Strip, and its support in the West Bank was pretty much the same. It's been for like the last 3 or 4 years. And then afterwards, they had another poll that was done. I want to say it was like 2 months after it came out. 2 months after. I don't know when they actually were able to poll people in the West Bank for that. There's a whole issue with that.
Get
but
to the
they
point,
polled
please.
them, and some of. Say that again.
Get to the point, please.
Oh, okay, fine. So I do think that that part of the reason why the Palestinians, especially in the West Bank, are supportive of Hamas is because of how they responded and the continued settlement creation that is happening within the West Bank currently.
Okay, I think you don't know anything about anything.
That's fine.
I agree.
Hold on,
I agree with
philosophical zombie hunter. You have to be more specific. You can't just say I think
Yeah,
you're
let
wrong.
me
Be specific.
let me expand. I agree with Wick that the thing that's uniting the people in the West Bank and Gaza is their hatred of Israel, and it shows in the polling numbers when Hamas attacked Israel. And also
do you think that hate's not justified at all?
Let me finish. Also, in universities in America, everyone was elated at how successful Hamas was at their invasion. Everyone was. I mean, well, yeah. I mean, you had people in the UK.
Do you mean some of
the
few protesters that happened?
I would like to finish what I wanted to say. You had people on the 7th of October at night, left-wing people and Muslim people around outside the Israeli embassy in London celebrating for what happened on October 7th.
Sure.
So people were
Not
elated at how successful Hamas was, at successful in quotations, at their invasion. And that's what seems to unify the West Bank and Gaza. It's very obvious. And
it's
really
hatred, it's hatred of Israel. But why is that hatred of Israel?
You really have to try hard to not
I don't have to try at all.
Reality.
I don't have to try hard at all. You are trying to make this be simply anti-Semitic, and I am telling you that there's realities on the ground.
Where did I say
that? So hatred of Israel is the only thing that's motivating this. Why do they hate Israel?
Why do they hate Israel?
Yes.
Look, That's a long topic. I suggest you see some kind of Douglas Murray video on that.
Douglas Murray is a weaselly piece of shit, and I will say that to everybody that's in this audience.
He's an articulate, intelligent person.
Oh, he's
I want to go back.
Hold on. Wait, we're not here. Hold on. Stop, all of you. We're not here to debate Douglas Murray. I don't care about Douglas Murray. But let's address this point of is there a justification? Because I think it's worth talking about. Are they justified in their hate? And the second question, the follow-up question to that would be, if they are, so what?
I'm not sure like how to justified in their hate. I mean, I would say no.
Okay.
I would say that basically ever since Jews migrated into Israel from like the late 19th century, and certainly in the early 20th century, Arabs were not too keen on Jews staying in the area. There were massacres, there were pogroms, there was a large Arab revolt in between 36 to 39.
Yeah.
This is before a state, before any oppression, before any and everything. So I can't really see how you can claim that just Israel being there is not like a core reason. If you go back in time far enough, before Israel was there, before any occupation and whatnot. I don't agree with the term anyway.
Yeah, I know.
How can you say that it's not that?
I want to know the reason why they hate Israel. Why do they hate it? You didn't give me a reason why they hated it.
Why I think they hate it?
Yes, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Hold
if it's
on,
true or not.
Steelman's position for us, philosophical zombie hunter. Steelman the position of why do Palestinians hate Israel, please.
I think Palestinians hate Israel because Israel was successful in pushing back 5 Arab armies when at the time Jews were seen as like the worst of the worst, the refugees that no country wanted, the emaciated.
So it's jealousy?
Hold on, envy, emaciated emaciated Holocaust survivors. All those put together were able to beat back 5 Arab armies. Now, particularly in Islam, people who want to see. So let me phrase it in another way. Before, they were beaten by the British Empire. That's fine because the British Empire was big and strong. These Jews who were dhimmis, who were second-class citizens, who were not allowed to ride on horses, they had to ride on donkeys. They were weak. They were pushed from everywhere. No one liked them. They were able to beat back the 5 Arab armies. And if Islam would like to rise again, then they have to destroy Israel, because Israel is like if you look at the map.
I'm going to translate to you what I heard. Okay. What I heard is that it's because they lost and they have resentment and animosity because they lost, and also because of Islam. Is that a fair assessment of what you said?
If with regards to the second point though, if Islam is to rise again, if you look at the map of the Middle East, like there's like all of North Africa and the Middle East are all Arab Muslim countries, and then there's like one tiny spot which is Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And if Islam is supposed to like conquer and proceed and rise again, then they have to get rid of that, and all that area has to be fully Muslim, especially as it was once belonged to Muslims.
Because of Islam.
Well,
Islam
is specified, but okay. I
specified, it's specified, but at the end of the day, that's what you're saying, though, because you believe that Islam is Islam is one of if not the key motivating factor here.
Certainly, it's a motivating factor for Hamas and the IRCG, and probably Hezbollah. I think they moved away. Once upon a time, it was national secularism with Arafat and probably before him, but now it's very much religious. It's
but this again ignores the realities on the ground, and
it does not.
Yes, it does.
It's perfectly with the realities on the ground.
It is ignoring the realities on the ground, and it's also giving way too much. It's also giving way too much credence to the fact that they lost, and it's Islam. So let's do a brief history lesson, because I think this is what's necessary.
I don't know if we need to hold on. When you say brief, please.
I mean super brief. Okay. So super brief. All right. How did
before you start, can I just at some point I want to go back to Gaza and Bibi and all that stuff you left off before. Go ahead.
Sure. So, how did Jewish people move to Palestine? They moved to Palestine.
Well, they always had a presence there.
Okay, how did the Jewish
migrate?
diaspora? Fine. How did the Jewish diaspora that existed in Europe and the United States and other places in the world move to Palestine? They moved in a number of different ways. They moved there by just moving there and taking land that was unoccupied, literally just empty land. They set up shop. They went and they bought land from the Ottomans, and they bought land from the people that owned the land there. Okay, when they bought land from the Ottomans, what did they do? They had a Western outlook about how land ownership worked. And that was not what the exact way that the Ottomans and Arabs had been treating land ownership for the last 100 years, because they had not adopted full-blown capitalism and property rights. So when they bought it from the Ottomans, they turned around and kicked the people off the land that were there, that had been there for sometimes hundreds of years, right? Do you think that that's going to piss anybody off if that happened? Would that legitimately piss?
I don't care.
I know you don't care. But this is part.
It's irrelevant. It's just irrelevant.
It is not irrelevant.
So they had bad feelings. What else?
They had bad feelings about it, right?
Okay,
so that's going to piss them off.
They felt bad. What else?
And then the British mandate for Palestine went away, and it gave way to the Jewish state. Is this not correct?
Well,
just generally.
Look, I have to say, I'm happy to answer all this because I'm very familiar with the history. I just have to say, why is it that every time there's like a massive terrorist attack, we have to go back to 1917?
The reason that we have to go all the way back to that is because people like you refuse to acknowledge the realities of reality on the ground.
Listen,
I'm going to make it only. I'm going to finish this point.
I'm still talking.
I'm going to finish this point.
I'm still talking though.
Okay, both of you are going to shut up for a moment. Okay. Cypher, finish your point. Then philosophy Hunter can respond.
It's fine.
The reason why that we have to go all the way back to 1917 or even 1880 is because everything that has happened since then has been a general tit for tat bullshit. And people like you do not want to acknowledge this and always boil it down to it's Islam and jealousy. That's it. It's always those 2 points. Okay. And you're not actually giving credence to the fact that there's oppression, there's land being stolen, and all these other stuff that actually impact the material realities on the ground.
Go ahead, respond uninterrupted.
I just think it's like deeply insulting every time there's like a massive massacre of Jews, or even like a suicide bus bomb or something. Like, oh, the reason why this bus bombing happened is because in 1917. Like, no, it's because some crazy person put on a suicide vest and went on a bus. That's why they did it.
Yes, that is why it happened.
You can't keep infantilizing these people and say they don't have any agency. They are choosing violence. They are choosing. There's no listen. They are adults. They have agency. They are choosing violence. They could choose other things. You don't see Israel wearing suicide vests and going to cafes in Germany.
No, they just assassinate their own prime minister.
You don't see these in other things, in other cultures. That you have to at least admit these people are choosing to take violence, and you can't keep every single time like stroking them, saying no, it's okay. You've been oppressed for like 100 years. It's not. They're choosing terrorism.
It's called an explanation.
The explanation is that they chose it.
We are circling the drain here, and I want to just kind of push on a couple points, right? To philosophical zombie hunter first, I'll push on you. You do recognize that regardless of if it's true or not, there are a lot of Palestinians, a lot of Gazans who feel that the Israelis have oppressed them. That they are in, what's it called, an open-air prison, that they have been unjustly targeted and kept from having a state that they wish to have. You understand and you would acknowledge that this is how they feel. Regardless if it's true or whether you agree with them, can you acknowledge that that's how they feel?
I disagree that they want to have a state.
You don't think they want to have a state? What?
No, I think they want... I think that they don't want to have a state. And they're clear about it. I think they want Israel to not exist. They don't want to have a state. They want Israel to not be a state.
Now, I think even Hamas, since 2014, has amended its not constitution. It's what is it? The party platform.
What did it say?
They amended it to something along the line. I have to relook it up because I didn't look it up right before.
What did they
amended
say?
to something that Israel as a state is a reality, but it does not have the right to be an oppressive ethnic state. It was
right. So what? I'll tell you what it says. Hamas was kind of like humorously saying, "Yeah, we agree to a two-state solution as long as the state of Palestine will be a Jew-free country, and the state of Israel will be a majority Muslim, country." I'm telling you, a majority Muslim country where the Jews are a minority, and go back to being dhimmi status. I'm explaining to you what they agreed to. This is what they're expressing. They don't.
Where are they expressing that? I've not read this anywhere. And I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm saying I haven't personally seen this, and so I want evidence of this to be the case.
Great.
If it's in Arabic, fine. Give me an Arabic translation.
You go look that up.
I've looked up a lot of stuff, and I've never seen this at all.
Let's go back to Gaza and Bibi. You said that Gaza is not autonomous despite it being an autonomous area, and you said, I'm still manning you now. You said they're not autonomous because they didn't have absolute freedom to move across their borders.
That's not why I said they weren't autonomous. I said they weren't autonomous because of economic reasons, as well as the fact that they were not able to freely not move across borders because people can control their own borders. I have no problem with Israel setting up a border checkpoint to make sure that it has its own security. That's not the issue. The issue is the economic and the other things that go along with that.
Okay, look, I don't understand how they have economic issues per se. When all the leaders of Hamas are billionaires, and there's 1,200.
Well, I mean, whenever you have a
let me finish. Whoa!
Hold on, I can address this.
No, I don't. I'm not asking.
I don't think he's made his point yet. Hold on, Cypher.
Jesus
he hasn't made his
Christ.
point yet. Oh, did you just mess with your audio and now it's broke again? I'm going to be very, very angry.
No, I just turned my mic off.
Okay, philosophical hunter. Finish your point and then go.
Thank you. The point with Bibi that people keep reciting is a myth. So the reporter that said that Bibi said that, he's trying to prop up Hamas, he was basically saying that in a meeting with other members of his cabinet so they can agree to a vote on it. He was politicking. The actual reason was because he was trying to do that, shrinking the conflict or that economic peace, where he wanted money to keep flowing into Gaza. So as you say, that people in Gaza would benefit from the money. Obviously, some Hamas members would take a cut, but still, the money would go in and people in Gaza would benefit from it. So your exact argument that they're trying to keep Gaza poor is not true. And you can see that there are very wealthy areas in Gaza. They were doing very well. They had a lot to lose from this invasion.
Anytime that there is an oppressive regime, which Hamas is a repressive regime,
Israel is
agree with that. It's going to end up enriching itself. That's always what happens. We can agree to that. The reason why I say that they are propping up Hamas with this money and everything like that in order to prevent a two-state solution is because, one, that's what Bibi has said. He said that numerous times since 2008.
I just debunked it.
No, you didn't debunk it. You claimed that he was politicking without any proof. That's not a debunk.
Even the reporter that said it said that's not the reason for it. He said he was just telling his cabinet member a story.
He was telling his cabinet member stories in order to politic. I understand that. That's fine. He might have been doing it at that moment. There are numerous instances of Bibi saying this out loud, time and time again, putting up maps that show all of Israel.
I'm not communicating them apparently very well. Everything I say is just completely ignored.
I'm not ignoring you. I'm saying that even if that was the case, so I'm going to give it to you, that there have been other statements done by Bibi Netanyahu to the contrary. Not only that, Bibi has undermined the PLO and Fatah at every conceivable chance that he could. When they worked for security, they gave up terrorist names. They gave up Hamas infiltrators that were coming into the West Bank. They gave these names up to Israel. And what did Israel do in return? Gave money to fucking Hamas and then took more land in the West Bank. He kneecapped Hamas. Okay,
you're not saying anything. You're not saying anything relevant. Can we just pinpoint? Can you explain to me how if you give, let's just take a blank slate. If Israel right now says, here you go, Gaza, just leaves Gaza, doesn't change the government, let's say tries to get rid of Hamas as much as possible, then leaves again and says you're an autonomous territory, how can you say that what happened October 7th won't happen again?
But that's not what I said would.
No, I'm asking you a
Oh,
question.
yeah, hold on.
I'm asking you a question.
Cypher, he's asking you if Israel is to take a less stern hand, for lack of a better term, on Fatah, on Hamas, on PLO, on all these people, right? Will that even work? Won't that simply just kick the can down the road, and then in 5 years, 10 years, there'll just be another October 7th?
So I'll answer both questions because I think Wick's question is actually different than Zombie's question. And the reason I say that is because Zombie's talking specifically about Israel not occupying or doing anything in Gaza and just giving Gaza autonomy, right? So I don't think that should happen because Hamas is shit. And Hamas needs to not have power or authority in Gaza. And that's going to require some sort of, for lack of a better term, occupation for at least a little bit while security is reestablished and a civilian or whatever government can come in, whether it's from the outside with the Arab League or the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia's, principalities that exist everywhere, or not. Something like that's going to have to happen. And that's just justified. But if they did that, if they just left, then Hamas would consider that a victory, rebuild, even if they didn't get money from Israel, even if Israel didn't let them get any money, they would be funneled money from Qatar or Iran or Saudi Arabia, and they would just rebuild and they would commit another terrorist attack. But that's not what I'm saying that should happen. So I want that to be clear.
Yes.
To Wick's point, if Bibi actually worked with Fatah and the PLO and did it in earnest. Bibi's not going to do this, but we'll say Israel did it in earnest. If Israel actually started to give more autonomy in the West Bank after there's been security cooperations, after there's been all these things that have been given up, if they actually prosecuted murders that happened in the West Bank by Israeli citizens and settlers against Palestinians, if they did these things, the ability for Fatah or the PLO or whatever entity that exists at the time they start doing this would probably, in my estimation, become the partner for peace that Bibi so claims that he wants to have happen. But if that doesn't happen, they have no incentive to be because they're getting kicked in the balls every time they do anything that is slightly correct.
So
can I just reply to that point?
You may. We are going to wrap up soon, by the way. So yeah.
Okay. Even if Israel has a peace agreement with Fatah being the leader of the Palestinians, the leader of the Palestinians in the West Bank, and let's say, for argument's sake, that the West Bank will be like its own autonomous territory and/or state. Yeah, it doesn't matter and it doesn't matter in the sense that it will just be a matter of time till it changes to Hamas. Hamas is already more popular in the West Bank than the Palestinian Authority. So it will, at some point, win an election. And even if it does not win a democratic election, it will simply take over by force. It will arrange a coup. Hamas are extremely violent. And we've seen it happen already in Gaza. They'll simply take over control by force. So either through the ballot or through the gun, at some point, a second state would be run by Hamas.
Okay.
I don't believe that is true.
So to
You've
Cypher,
seen it happen already.
Hold on. To Cypher,
No, we haven't seen it happen already, but that's fine.
Can you name a time previous to Bibi that there has been a real peace movement in either Palestine, West Bank, Gaza, Israel, whatever you want to call it, right? Can you name any organization or group that has risen to power within the Palestinian territories that you would point to say, look, when Israel treats them at least not as bad as Bibi does, they're suing for peace?
Between 2000 and 2006, before the civil war between Hamas and Fatah.
That was the second intifada, and they had 140 suicide bombers at that time.
I know. You said you asked for organization, okay? I'm telling you where we have it, all right? Prior to the civil war between Fatah and Hamas, that was partly because they just wanted it themselves, partly because it was fomented. Because there's reason to believe that the Hamas just hit them before Fatah could hit them. Like there's some things about that, so that could be a thing. Not saying that's exactly what happened. That's just theory about it for the audience. During that time, there was moves to come to some sort of detente. Okay. And there was leadership within Fatah that was becoming more moderate. And I can't remember the guy's name. He's been brought up recently. I think he's the finance minister or something of Fatah, or the finance guy of Fatah.
Couldn't tell you off the top of my head, sorry.
Yeah, but there's one guy who's been mentioned again recently, and he has been there. And then I think he was actually killed, or not him, not the guy that's been mentioned recently, but there was another guy that was, I think, killed during the Civil War. I'm a little fuzzy on those exact details, but that's when I think it could have happened. Another time it could have happened is when Abbas was working with Bibi and other people within the Israeli government to actually go against Hamas, one, and to also increase security between Israel and the Palestinians, just generally. They didn't have any control or any much influence in Gaza until like 2013 or 2014 when Hamas and Fatah started to have a detente. But that's around the time frames. So we had those two different time frames. Yes, I understand that there was the second Intifada that happened. There was the bombings that it was the 90. This is before the second Intifada, but the 96 bombing, is that right? Zombie, is it the 96 or 97 bombing? The
about the suicide bombing?
Yeah, it was the bus one.
There's more than one, but go ahead.
Well, yeah, I'm saying that those bombings then, okay, the bus bombings that happened either 96 or 97.
Yeah, it was a pretty dark time to be in Israel. I remember.
No, I was
talking in our school. We were trying to figure out like how can we prevent Palestinians from blowing themselves up. That was the conversation in our classroom.
When you say your classroom, were you in college at the time? I'm just curious.
No, younger.
Okay. It not relevant. I was just curious. So yeah, and I know that. And what I was about to say is like those bombings kind of destroyed the Israeli left. And I say kind of. The Israeli left basically.
Let me tell you what destroyed the Israeli left. 2000. Sorry. So before 2000, the Israeli left and right were like 50-50, like one member of parliament apart, and you win the whole thing. We were very, very close. We had a far left, we had a very small far right. It was basically neck and neck the whole time. And in 2000, when Ehud Barak went to do the Camp David with Arafat.
Yeah.
At the time, I mean, I can kind of like explain the sentiment if I can, if Wix give me like a few minutes to do this. So basically,
hold on.
There was no.
Before you start, I just want to reiterate that I don't have all night, right? So if this is how you guys want to do it, we can. But go ahead.
I'm open.
I'll shorten it. Basically, we were waiting for 3 days. We were also moving out of southern Lebanon at the time. We were withdrawing from southern Lebanon. We were waiting night and day. They had their cell phones turned off. The whole 3 days, pundits on the television were saying, there's 3 options. If he's very generous, he'll do this. If he's not so much, he'll do that. And then like 3 days of this nonsense of pundits like telling us everyone's like biting their fingernails the whole time.
Okay.
And then Ehud Barak comes and says he agreed to offer them a ridiculously generous offer. I'm not saying like how the Palestinians saw it. I'm saying how the Israelis saw it.
Yeah, I understand.
A ridiculous generous offer. Like no one, like 95% of the country would not agree to it. I think that the Minister of Defense saying this is like a coup. And then like after they're telling us that Barak offered these things, like half a second later they're saying, and Arafat didn't accept this. So that just killed the Israeli left. That was like Israeli left right now. They want to vote.
That's fair.
They want to vote for left-wing parties, but no left-wing parties has actual solution to the security issues, which is number one. So that's why you're seeing these right-wing parties come up. But technically, like once upon a time, Israel fundamentally was a socialist country, a communist country. We have kibbutzim from the left. Like Avodah was like a massive party, and now it's like almost gone.
Okay, yeah, I think that started to. Yeah. What I was about to say doesn't matter. So I think it's fair to say that the denial of the deal that was offered did have a great contribution to the destruction of the Israeli left. I personally think the bombings had more to do with it, but I'm not Israeli, so I don't know exactly. Just my own take on that. I will say that in those deals, there was not anything that Arafat could have actually accepted in order for him to bring back to the Palestinians and what that kind of amalgamation of internal Palestinian power struggles that were happening. And the reason for that is that there wasn't any answer to the refugee question at all. There's been some reports by various people that were part of the talks at Camp David Accord and the Oslo Accords about Arafat saying that he couldn't accept it. There's been other analysts that said that because of what was offered and his own tenuous position of power within Fatah, that he couldn't accept it for those reasons as well. But everybody kind of agrees that there was not an answer to the refugee question, and that there wasn't a counter from Arafat for the refugee question. There's been talk that he wanted the Israelis to come over with some sort of offer for that. What that could have been, nobody really knows, but it wasn't done. So that's essentially why the deal.
I just want to point out that this refugee problem is an excellent example of why the UN and the West perpetuates a forever war with Israel and Palestine. Those refugees should have been resettled 3 years or 4 years after they became refugees, not 50 years.
No, they weren't resettled at all.
Well, let me finish. They should have been resettled. The refugee status should have gone at some point, but because the UN gives Palestinians some kind of magical forever refugee status, as well as like Fourth Geneva Convention protections. This reason is why. I mean, Arafat could have said something else, but this was the reason why he walked away from that peace agreement. And those refugees should have been resettled decades ago. They should not have been. They should not have been a topic of discussion. And this is one of the key reasons why the UN and the West needs to kind of move back a little and let Israel and Palestine work things out on their own.
I want you to respond to that. Hold on, just to clarify, right? To maybe rephrase that a bit, because I'm very interested in your response to this, Cypher, right? To what extent, if any, has this propping up of the Palestinian state, such as it is, by the West, by the UN, by other countries, saying, keep fighting, one day you'll eventually be free. To what extent, if any, has that contributed to that, as philosophical zombie hunter points out, a forever war status?
I think that there is some truth to that, but I'm not going to blame the UN for it. Instead, I'll blame the Arab states where the Palestinians are, because the Arab states never agreed to allow them to resettle or become citizens in those states. I don't think Israel is the only bad actor here. I've constantly said Hamas is a bad actor. Fatah has done some fucked up shit, and we can talk about before 1978, all the stuff that they did. The Arab nations have done fucked up shit. Iran has done fucked up shit. Like, I think everybody is kind of done wrong things here, and I think it's all contributed to this problem. So there is some truth to the fact that they weren't resettled, and that is an issue. But we also have to acknowledge that, typically speaking, after World War II, when the Geneva Conventions were ratified, they said that refugees should be allowed to go back to their countries, because Europe was dealing with a massive refugee problem on top of a massive economic downgrade because of the war. And they needed people to go back to where they were supposed to not only help rebuild those areas, but also to bring pressure off of the countries that had more resources, but not enough, because they had gotten destroyed in the war as well. So because of that, there's been this general idea that if you're made a refugee, you don't become permanent state status in an area if you don't want it, because you should be allowed to return after hostilities have generally been ended. So that's why I think that Israel not answering that question, especially since it's such a key component to the Palestinian identity, and because of the Nakba. And yes, I understand, before anybody talks about it, I understand that Jews were also expelled from Arab countries in Iran for other reasons as well. But because that's such a core part of their identity, that has to be answered. And without an answer to that, there's not going to be any peace deal that can be reached.
Are people in the West Bank or Gaza still refugees?
People in the West Bank and Gaza, no, I would say that they're experiencing a different kind of oppression.
Well, but are they technically refugees? Sorry.
Oh, technically, you mean legally speaking?
Yes. Does UN?
I think the UN considers them to be internally displaced refugees.
So one day when Israel is conquered, they can go back home.
No, I don't. I think.
Well,
no,
that's what
because
UNRWA is communicating, right?
Wait, I'm sorry.
Because
Say again?
if they was set, if that's what the UN is communicating to these Palestinians.
No, I don't think the UN is communicating this at all.
Let me just finish my point. You are a refugee in Gaza. There's refugee camps in Gaza. It's called refugee camps.
Yeah,
right?
no, I understand.
So if one day when Israel is beaten and destroyed, then you can go home. You're displaced. This isn't your home, even though you've been there for 50 years and several generations.
Sure.
You should be settled. You should not still have refugee status.
I think that I don't think they have like illegally refugee status that is propping them up. I think that they are
They absolutely have refugee status.
Okay, by definition, they are still internally displaced refugees, but the UN is not propping them up and saying, "Oh, eventually you'll be able to go back to your exact home that Israel took over," and that's not what the UN is promoting.
But
no, maybe that's
hold on, stop. I understand this may not be what the UN is promoting, but there are plenty of people who are.
I mean, yeah, Hamas, but
not just Hamas, right? There's a lot of people who are the March of Return, the right of return. That has been something that's been
the right of return is largely about the refugees that are in Jordan, Egypt, and others, not the internally displaced ones that are inside of Gaza and the West Bank.
But
Israel is not allowing. Israel is not allowing them to go back into those places either, especially in the West Bank, because they don't want the population to swell. Well, at least the right wing doesn't want the population to swell.
I understand, but these issues are all like connected.
I think they are connected, but I think that Zombie, from my personal perspective, I think Zombie is putting too much credence to that, and I think that the internally displaced refugee ones aren't as necessary to solving the conflict as the ones that are outside.
Fair enough. Okay, gang. I'm gonna cut this short. Right, I know we had some technical issues. I wanted to get more time in here, but I do have like a hard out here very soon, and I want to give each of these wonderful gentlemen a chance to have a closing statement and tell people where they can find them. I know we didn't get to a lot, but there's just so much here, and so I want to give first to Philosophical Zombie Hunter. Then we're gonna let Cypher have the last word. But just give us your closing thoughts. And please answer within the closing thoughts for my curiosity. Is this a solvable conflict at all? Or is it just going to end in the death of one or the other? Go ahead.
I think it can be solvable. I don't think it can be solvable within the context that the West wants it to. I think we should look at how the Middle East is shaped up, how democracies have not really done well in certain Arab countries, and how Emirates or like city states in the Middle East have done much better, or tribe-based city states or Emirates. I think those will succeed better. We were talking at the beginning about a federated solution. This is something akin to that, where you have a tribe. Everyone is loyal to that tribe. It's a homogeneous population. Even now, like it's still like basically tribal. And once we respect that culture, I think that we can achieve peace, because the patriarchs of those tribes are interested in their grandchildren and the great grandchildren being alive and not suicide bombing themselves and having a good future. So I think if you respect that culture and build a political framework around that, we will have peace.
Well, thank you for being here, Philosophical Zombie Hunter. I really appreciate you. And I'm sure we'll see you in the Discord arguing away. Cypher, please.
Yeah, thank you, Wick, for having me on again. And I apologize about my audio issues. This happened once before. I just have to figure out how to permanently fix it. But I appreciate the patience from everybody, especially the audience. So thank you. So I think that this is a solvable dilemma. It needs to be solved within the region with some minor help from the West. And that means it has to be done between the Palestinians and Israelis first and foremost. The Palestinians cannot be sidelined. The Abraham Accords sidelining Palestinians is not the approach to this. It's part of Hamas did what it did for various reasons, and one of those reasons is because they were getting sidelined, and they felt that if they didn't do something like this, they would be forever sidelined. And I think that's part of the reason as well. I'm not sure exactly what zombie means about the federated or the principality stuff, but I do think that it ultimately in what could be the best outcome is to have a single state solution that respects the autonomy of both sides in a kind of a United States federated sort of system. And it could be 3, it could be 2 states. Doesn't matter to me. It matters to what is going to actually create security for that. But it has to come between the Palestinians and the Israelis and answering the refugee question. And that can be answered in a number of different ways. I don't think that all the refugees need to be resettled. I think that if everybody got together and gave a bunch of refugees in Jordan and Lebanon and Syria and the UAE, like all these places, they just gave them money and said, here, now you're a citizen, here's the payment that we have. I think maybe that could also be part of the solution, because blood money is part of Islamic tradition. So, but that's where I'm at.
Okay, I'll see you guys later. Bye.